We get some people who get tough with us sometimes, and the line that we usually throw out is, do you want 80% accuracy or do you want 0% visibility?
Right.
You're layering data sources that are complementary, right? Like that, you get a source of truth. On our side, you get this entire swath of information that you're never going to get through POS integrations, right? Because POS integrations happen at the retail level.
Yeah.
There's nothing competitive, right?
I've successfully built and sold companies for millions. I know what it takes to scale, sell, and win in this industry. If you're ready to turn your product into profit, you're in the right place. Today, it's not just about me though, it's about learning from the best. Rick Bashkoff, a seasoned cannabis investor and now CEO, knows how to transform ideas into a thriving business.
There's this iterative mindset around company building that just it doesn't work. And that same iterative and the growth expectations they don't line up. I kind of found, this kind of niche where people were looking to invest in cannabis. They were interested. They also didn't have 250 grand that they could throw at each deal.
Right.
So now Rick shows up and says, hey, look, I've been involved in early stage. I have a thesis. It was all around the East Coast, kind of third wave of cannabis legalization that has all but happened at this point.
In this episode, he shares insights on the role of data in cannabis, the ethics of web scraping, and how to partner with the right people to bring your vision to life.
3 things that we bonded around, right? Information shouldn't be that expensive. Information shouldn't be this difficult to use. When you have questions about the data, you should have someone to talk to. And so those are the 3 places that we've tried to stand out.
Whether you're scaling your business or pitching to investors, this conversation is packed with actionable insights you can't afford to miss.
Well, first off, thanks for having me. Rick, the CEO of Little Alerts. We're a data company. We're a software company that creates very lightweight, easy-to-use tools for cannabis operators. We've been around for about a year and a half. My background is in software, data, and really early-stage companies.
Yeah.
And so, I met this group about a year and a half, now almost 2 years ago. And we kind of all really kind of rallied around this concept of, cannabis operators need more information. They need it to be simple, they need it to be cost effective, and they need somebody that they can ask questions. And so those are really the 3 areas that we step out. And then I also have an investment group called Receptive Capital. It's an investment group and an advisory group.
Oh, we're going to get to that in a second.
Okay, fair enough. The idea there was, years ago, still the case, right? But, capital's not easy in cannabis. And so I tried to unlock what is a normally pretty silent group in private investing, which is kind of what's known as your retail investor. So a retail accredited investor. So these are people who might not be able to write, a $500K check out of a fund. They can write a $10K check. They can write a $25K check. And so what Receptive Capital does is kind of pools that money so that more people can gain access to investment opportunities. So between those 2 things, I'm an early stage focused person. I like when companies are messy. That's really where I thrive. And so that's where I spent most of my career.
That's fun. I like how you said that when things are messy.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like when things are too smooth, it's boring.
Yeah. Look, I get lost. I started my career.
Almost like no direction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because to me, I'm definitely, my wife describes me this way sometimes, is I'm definitely someone who runs towards the fire.
Right.
Right. I want to solve the problem. I want to find out what went wrong and I want to help. And so if you have that kind of starting point, I think working in these types of earlier stage kind of frontier industries is a lot easier. No doubt, no shade at anybody who goes and gets a corporate gig. Of course, that's an incredible skill. I'll take my brother, for example. Warner Music Group, Facebook, Instagram, he's worked at major companies and he's been very successful.
Right.
I couldn't do that.
Right. So wait a second. When I was looking up your bio, it said something about Warner Music also. So you worked there?
Oh yeah, I rode the coattails of my brother for the first half decade of my
career. Oh, that's so interesting. So take me back through that just to get a little more background. So did you pop out of college and go right to Warner, or?
Yeah, in college.
And you doing A&R or something? Were you doing some fancy gig? What were you doing?
That's the fun stuff in music. But look, I got into some trouble in college, and I needed to get out of college. And my brother was good enough to, help me find a job and kind of get me on the right path. And so when I landed at Warner Brothers, I was on the music I was in the music group, and I started off working in DVDs, which is like
now you're dating. You're like, yeah,
like how old I am now. And then I got like one of the coolest jobs ever up in New York at corporate, which was like video was brand new. So like music videos when we were growing up, they were a marketing expense.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm making this video to sell more albums.
Right. Exactly. Right? Sell more tickets at my concerts.
Yes.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
YouTube shows up. And all of a sudden, all the music companies are like, well, wait, we can, just like we make money off of this music asset, like we can now monetize our music videos and create all this different content. And so I was actually the first person at Warner Music Group that managed those video companies. So like YouTube, back then, like Google Video was like a thing, right?
Google Videos.
MySpace and all these places that had video. And meeting all of those early stage software companies is where I kind of found my, like, okay, I have no business being here in the music industry at a big corporation. I pissed too many people off. I asked too many questions, kind of thing. And so, yeah, I ended up, there was a group from Google that started a software company, a software media company called Howcast Media. And
I know Howcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Howcast is one of the first kind of like bulk producers of content.
You got it.
Yeah.
That was it. So I was there for 4 years. The management team is brilliant. Most of them came from Google. One of them came from Viacom. And so there was just this great mixture of software plus media. I have a great story. So I showed up, I'm coming off of corporate, right? And I came there to do business development. And so I get my first term sheet on a deal and I like run it over to the CEO and I'm like, hey man, can you approve this? And he kind of looked at me strange, like, dude, I hired you to approve these things. Like, I got bigger fish to fry, right? So that was kind of like my first, stepping into a small early stage.
You were back that you were like running to daddy, be like, hey, please,
I need permission, right? Like that's corporate. The corporate thinking is, who do I need approval from to move forward?
Yeah. And the startup forums here. Yeah. No, I'm just like, make the decisions. Yeah. We're a big proponent of, the old Jeff Bezos attitude of, one-way decisions and two-way decisions. We're just like, if it's a two-way decision, just make the decision to move on. Don't wait 3 weeks to have another meeting about it.
You know what else he said that I really appreciate is disagree and commit.
Yeah.
Because that never happens.
Yeah.
Right. It's like you'll spend months, maybe years with, top executives arguing over the strategy. It's like, a good leader is like, all right, like I have 5 people on this team. 4 of them are going in that direction. I'm the odd man out or odd person out. Like, let's go. Yeah. We're going to find
But we're going to figure it out. Yeah. We're going to commit.
Exactly.
Right. We all commit as a team.
Exactly.
Yeah. So just as a side note, because you brought up MySpace, because I used to work with Viacom a bit back in the day in agency world back in New York City.
Yeah, of course.
And, I was part of the group. I didn't do any of the work on this one, but it was like right after I joined, like right after this was the launch of MTV2, the two-headed dog.
Really?
We were the company that I worked for was the company that launched
MTV2.
And because they were just like, it was all guerrilla marketing back then. It was just like, how can we shock people into like looking at us, not much has changed since then. But MySpace, I feel like there should be a resurgence of MySpace. So anybody who wants to do this right now, I think there needs to be a new homepage for people. Yeah. Because I think even with the TikTok stuff going down and up and all this other stuff, it's just like, why can't you just have like that landing page where people can see what you're up to, like you specifically,
and what you're
just getting a feed?
Yeah, what you're about.
Yeah, exactly. Like top 10 friends lists and all that stuff. I think it would be a big hit right now.
I think you're right. I think that, and honestly, I think that a lot of these platforms, as you said, they've kind of over-indexed on the feed.
Yeah, algorithm driven. Yeah, and so now everybody is hacking the algorithm, and now. I don't want to go too far on this path because I could go off for a bit, but like with AI, it's like there's just computers talking to computers at some point. Yeah. Like that's the singularity in my head when it comes to like what social media is going to be. It's going to be computers talking to computers and computers watching videos about other people that computers made.
Yeah, I mean,
so it's like, what do you do? Like, it's like, what's the humanity in any of that?
I'm with you. I'm struggling with the concept of like completely made up influencers on Facebook,
exactly,
and Instagram, right?
And it's like as a tech nerd, I love that stuff because I'm just like, oh my god, you can create this person. Because it was years and years ago, I came up with this concept, and somebody was like, isn't that just like Jarvis from Iron Man? And I've never seen that movie, so I don't know. But I was like, you can recreate even based on the technology 4 or 5 years ago when I was talking through these things. I've been doing AI since 2000. Yeah. So I came with this concept where I was just like, you can recreate like a loved one that had passed, right? You have all the recordings of their videos, of their audio, and you just recreate this person. I happen to know somebody who's in kind of like that world too. She's the CEO of a company. I probably should name the name, but it's all like end of life stuff. And I'm like, man, this would be a nice bundle add-on because people who are grieving, but at some point you have to, it's like, then it comes into the psychology of like, at what point do you get over the person, or do you just never get over them? Because I wrote a screenplay once where it was this is before COVID. It was like a pandemic was happening. It was like this weird thing. And I'm like, oh my God, it's a pandemic now. But it was right before COVID happened. I wrote this little screenplay, not even a screenplay.
Wait, you wrote a screenplay about a pandemic right before COVID?
Yeah. But it including this kind of thing where the main character, she comes home to her apartment and she just starts talking to her mom. But then you realize slowly that the mom is passed and this is just like a recreation of like the mom.
That's cool.
And so this is like 2019, and
very clever concept.
And I was just like, I should do something with this. But then, ideas are fucking dumb. So it's all execution. Right?
Sure.
Anyways.
I think we all have a script that we plan on having made someday.
Really, I'm going to write a book. But there's no lack of ideas floating around my head. And that's probably one of the things I struggle with most as an entrepreneur is that like, I'm always that squirrel, like chasing a nut. Like, where's the nut? Like, I got to go find this next thing. I've got that squirrel brain and I know it. So I always have to recognize it, just like focus on what I need to achieve. You know what I mean?
I got to be honest with you, man, just like working in the early stage space for most of my career, I have a great appreciation for folks like you. I'm not like that, right? I have a great appreciation for folks that have that many ideas.
I can't stop
through their head.
Yeah, I literally cannot stop.
I work with like a couple of the co-founders at Little Earths are very similar, right? Like it's like ideas all the
and it's
time.
Up to you to be like, no, we're working on this. Let's go.
Like it's a good match, and you probably have people here that do that for you as well.
Oh, 100%.
And like that balance is super important, and I learned that a lot, in my late 20s at some of these startups where you have like, the kind of real powerful kind of moves oceans founder who just has the ideas and the vision, and then you have the person standing behind that person who's like, okay, we can actually do that today.
Reel it in a little
wait
bit.
2 years for that, like kind of, and so I've definitely made kind of a career after aligning myself with people like you.
That makes a ton of sense, especially with Receptive. Because you want to make sure it's, you can stand behind the founder, and they may have these great visions and stuff like that, but maybe even walking them through like, all right, what's the next step though, before you don't go 1,000 steps ahead, like what's tomorrow look like, right?
Yeah. And I think that like, look, raising capital is awful. Yeah. It's just the worst. Yeah. It's the worst, right? Because you're a founder, you have this great idea, you're excited about it, you've put some might behind it, and now you have to get distracted for 6 months and talk to a bunch of people that you really don't want to talk to. It's kind of feels like a waste of time, but the money at the end of the road gets you what you need. And so I really had a great time, particularly in the cannabis space, meeting with entrepreneurs and just helping them kind of cut through the clutter, right? Like having a really brief conversation with people and just be like, look, get a model and a short deck and just start chatting.
So what's the like, I guess, switch it on to the investor side before we head over to the Little Earth side a little bit. There's so many different ways you can go with this. Like, what do you look for in companies like, I guess, today versus what you looked for them back in like 2020?
Yeah, I gotta be honest with you, we haven't made an investment in probably 2 years now. Right. It's a total bummer. Part of it is,
and you have LPs, I'm assuming?
Yeah. And so like it's a lack of interest, but also, look, the caliber of pitches that I saw at the beginning of this process were far better than what I see today. I'd say that like there's been a drop off in that the quality, and maybe this is partly like people are leaving this to AI and other things to kind of write these things for them. But I got close with one this year, but I haven't really met a group of founders in a long time and look, like I feel this way about a lot of founders. Just because I like a founder doesn't mean we automatically invest. Right. It has to line up with our thesis. There's lots of valuation, lots of things have to line up. But I haven't met, like back when I started this thing in 2021, and just to be clear, it's the first time I'm managing other people's money. So I'm being very careful with who I'm betting on and all these things, but the pitches were better. The vigor for the industry was better.
Well, was it better? If you think back, was it actually better, or were you just now you're no more And so now you look at it in a more critical eye.
It's a great question.
Because you just started that, right?
It's a good question.
One of my follow-up questions is going to be simply like, how do you start something like, you're just like, what gives you the right to just be like, I'm going to start like taking people's money in and then investing it? But go ahead. Sorry.
I think some of my investors probably have the same question. I do think that they're worse today.
Yeah.
I think that the crop that you were part of a few years back had a much better understanding of what they were getting themselves into. And I know that may sound crazy, but there's still people that are showing up with pitches today that is like back of a napkin idea that like,
and we were going to charge $4,000 a pound.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Now, and like maybe there's some truth to what you're saying, because like now it's like you're looking at a graveyard of companies that have done things similarly, or, you know, one more, you know, bro group in tech vest shows up and says, we've been on Wall Street for the last 20 years. Now we're going to run a cannabis company. And you just kind of like, you know, like you're seeing
there's a template for that. Yeah, there's definitely a template out there that exists.
And so like you're seeing more of that now, which is, you know, it's been frustrating because I like bringing really exciting opportunities to my group. And so I'll tell you what gave me the right to do this is I didn't, you know, I've done okay for myself, but I don't have $100,000 check to write myself. Right. And so after investing in some of the like publicly available investment opportunities in like the 2016 to 2020.
You mean like cannabis specifically, like MSO stock?
Yeah.
I mean, so publicly traded stock.
So there was this time period where I was still back in like outside of cannabis, and you know, I was.
You were consuming, or you were just
since I was 14, man.
Right. So you were consuming, and you're like, hey, these pot stocks are popping off. Let me look at them a little bit.
Yeah, and then I showed up and I had like a panic attack because I was like, I'm missing an industry.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even know what was going on.
The FOMO. You're like, I should be in this. Why am I not doing this?
And so, you know, look, I was in a position that, you know, I wasn't going to leave, and you know, the company that I was at, I had just taken on a role and everything, and so my wife and I decided to invest, and you know, there was money to be made between 2016 and but call it 2019.
Yeah,
and so I did well, and I'm like 6 months into it, and my wife like basically sat me down and was like, "What are we doing here? Like, you made the investments. Now every conversation we're in, you're talking about how cannabis is going to change the world. Like, why aren't we going all in on this, right?" And so I spent a little bit of time. So my wife was really the one who pushed me into the industry, and I started kind of what I knew. I knew some venture capital folks who had invested in a company I was working at, and they were like, "We're interested in cannabis. Come join us, and we just want you to teach us. You know, we want you to be out in market representing us." And so that was a great gig because I didn't know anything about like all the stuff that you had in your head when you started. Like I had none of it.
Right.
You know, anything about cultivation and products and like none of this stuff.
Right.
I was a software guy.
Yeah.
And so that was a great time period for me to walk around facilities like this and see how these products are made and hear challenges that people were having, evaluate business plans. And it only, gasoline. It threw like a ton of gasoline on my fire. And so, yeah, like that's really how, but the reason that I started Receptive was I wanted to get into these earlier stage deals. Right. And I couldn't.
Were the VCs mostly interested in like the larger deals through like, hey, I've got, you know, not to name any names, like this big MSO.
Yeah, like the VCs investing in MSOs, and like not for nothing, and I'm sure I'll take heat for this, but like a CPG company like that, it's not a venture business.
Yeah.
It's just not. Yeah. It's not built that way. It needs a lot of capital to develop.
It does. Yeah.
There's a certain cultural element to it that operates differently. Like you don't move fast and break things.
Right. You try not to break anything.
Yeah. Right? Like in software, it's like, I can't tell you how many times we're breaking stuff. We're breaking stuff every day.
Every day. We're launching something. Oh, we broke it.
We're breaking something. We go back. We roll it back. Like there's this iterative mindset around company building that just like, it doesn't work. And that same iterative and those growth expectations that just, they don't line up. And so, I kind of found, this kind of niche where people were looking to invest in cannabis. They were interested. They also didn't have $250,000 that they could throw at each deal.
Right.
So now Rick shows up and says, "Hey, look, I've been involved in early stage. I have a thesis. It was all around the East Coast, kind of third wave of cannabis legalization that has all but happened at this point, with the exception of Florida. And then, I think what ended up, getting people to move, including myself, was at that time period, there was still, a clamp on capital, but there was all of these great new companies that were popping.
Yeah.
So I personally think that everyone's running around talking about how the capital raising, environment is tough. I also think that like the crop of companies that are popping up now are largely copycat. A lot of the stuff that's in now, I'm not someone that thinks that there's no new ideas coming, but like a lot of what I see today, it's like I understand why a lot of investors are not getting excited about it. It's a lot of, you chasing after stuff that's already being done.
Right, exactly. And they have the head start and they have the distribution and the sales and all this other stuff already. And so how are you going to differentiate yourself enough to like penetrate even that market? So yeah, I mean, in getting investors funds in, fundraising in general is necessary in some cases, but it is a huge waste of time.
Sure.
Like I am not focused on the company at all at that point. I'm just like, I'm keeping like the lights on just to make sure everything's working still, but I'm not leading the team with a new vision or anything like that. I'm literally being like, hey, I got to go to New Jersey. I got to go to California. I got to go to New York City and like meet these investors and like try to get them along with the idea. And I think we've had success raising, but it's because I focused on it for like 6 months straight, if not longer. I was just heads down and doing it. And I come from back in New York City. I've got a ton of friends back in New York City who threw cash in, and I'm just like so grateful for that because that floated a little bit further. And it just so happened I had those connections already, but finding net new kind of investors, man, that was the biggest struggle.
Yeah, and
you're like cold calling and cold emailing or LinkedIn or whatever, and you're just like, hey, I've got this great idea, you should invest, and you're trying to like tease them along, and you're like, hey, it's only so much availability of these shares, and you're kind of like playing that game, but everybody sees through it,
Yeah, I think the other thing that I didn't realize about early stage investing is how few people actually lead in that space. So you're in the early stage space, you're kind of brought up being told that venture capitalists take the biggest risks, right? They're the earliest of stages and everything. And as you get into the network and you start talking with people, especially, the Silicon Valley group of investors, they're following like 10 or 12 investors.
Yeah.
Like there's not like they beef up these teams. They've got analysts from every top MBA university. And then like, honestly, they move when Andreessen Horowitz moves.
A16 invested, I'm in.
I'll follow.
It's all following.
So I think that was a little bit of like, it was a little depressing.
Yeah.
When I got into it because I looked up to these people. Right. Like these people are taking it early. Like I want to do that, Right. And look, like my plans for Receptive, like right now it's largely an advisory firm. And I'm saying these types of things to companies, right? Like they'll come to me and say like, we want to put together a data room. And sometimes I'll say, you don't waste your time on the data room. Go operate the company for another 6 months.
Right, exactly.
Because like, there's
like, what do you look at? Like when you're thinking, when's a good time to start fundraising?
You need paying customers. If I see one more like that, the back of the napkin time, it's gone. It's over. Yeah. It didn't work. Right? People lost a lot of money. Just like, the VC model of like, we'll throw
selling the dream.
Exactly. And like, we'll throw money at all these companies. And then this portion of them will pay us back. This portion of them will excel.
Right.
Like it didn't work. Right. And so like, I think that, for me, first and foremost, have you gone through the process that you have a product that someone's willing to take money out of their wallet and pay for on a consistent basis?
Right.
If you have that, I think it's time to start having conversations with investors. And I say time to start having conversations with investors because I think the point that you brought up before is a strong one, which is you don't just kind of like show up, give your pitch, and someone's like, great, I'll write you a check.
Right.
It's like you build a relationship with these people over time, right? And so I think that, a lot of things that and I've done it too, right? Like a lot of things that people get wrong is like, okay, I'm going to go raise money and I'm going to start on this day and we've got our materials ready and we're going to run a process.
And you got to like process.
You got to sort of run a process all the time, right? And like, so once you have, what I'll say to folks is, that will ask my opinion on this, and I'm by no means an expert myself. I'm just going off of things that I've observed with people that I've been lucky enough to be around, is your head's down until you have people paying for your product. Once that happens, and maybe you've got a person or two that can look after things, you pick your head up and you start having the conversation.
Right.
Hey, investor reaches out to you during that first time period. Listen, I'm laser focused. I'm not talking to anybody right now. You just have, hey, you going to raise money? I don't know. Maybe. We're going to maybe raise money maybe this summer or whatnot. You just start having those conversations. Start to hear the terminology, start to meet the players, get a feel for personally. Like, the other thing also is people are rushing in to take outside capital and board member, and then you work for them.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize that, right? Is like you're the CEO, you've got this great, you plow all your effort into building this thing, and you take on some money, all of a sudden you got to answer to something.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, give me the reports, give me the data and all this other stuff, right?
And
so from like the way I look at that one is I'm just fortunate that I am the board. I mean, it's me.
It's awesome.
And we have...
It's great, Jason.
And we have, like I said, angels primarily involved here. So, I mean, there's a few like family office type of situations, but it's mostly just angels. And for us, it's really been like coming from the world of people from the Silicon Valley kind of experience, but back in that day, it was Silicon Alley in New York City.
Sure.
And seeing people get picked up and get millions of dollars in investment money and stuff like that. And then having a boss again, that's just, I couldn't live with, I was just like, I don't want a boss. Like, that's why.
Being boss too.
Exactly. And they're going to be like, and they may persuade you, for better or worse, to take a deal that you don't want to take, right? I've heard horror stories from the top VCs. You're like, oh, these are the best VCs in the world. They're going to treat me fair and all this other stuff. The reason why they're the top is because they're aggressive and brutal. Yeah. Like, they get what they want. Like, if they agree with you, everything's rosy. If they don't agree with you, it is a nightmare.
It's bad,
yeah, it can go really far south. So, and obviously I'm not nowhere an expert on this stuff either, but I do feel like I've seen enough that I can be like, I can kind of spot some of these trends to be like, this is things I want, this is things I don't want in my life, right?
And a lot of these firms will position themselves as, look, like, we're not just capital, we're your strategic partner. Right. And like, I hate to say this, but a lot of that's nonsense.
Yeah.
It's a dollars and cents game. I think that, anyone who's like, look, we want to bring on a strategic investor, like, you better have a really good reason that they have to be
like,
strategic.
What are they actually
doing,
Yeah, we used to see all these deals back in the day, and I'd be like, oh, this guy's hot on us, like, let's talk to them. And we talk to them, they're like, okay, so we're going to invest $100,000, and then you're going to pay us $10,000 a month for our strategic services. So I'm just like, what do you, like, so you're giving us $100,000, we're just going to give it back to you. And now we're at a $10,000 contract every month for you to give us strategic advice. But I'm like, I don't need strategic advice. I already know what I'm doing. I'm executing on the plan already.
Someone said this to me recently, and I think it's to this point, and I think it's a really smart way of playing it. Is like, if you're a CEO and you're getting to the point where there's something that you guys have to do in order to grow, but no one in the company knows how to do it, that's an interesting point to start looking for a strategic investor, simply because they can help you find the right people. Like, they've got a network that you can tap into. But I'm so wary of any investor that shows up and says, I'm going to plug you into all these partnerships and I'm going to generate all this business for you. Yeah. I seldom see that work.
Yeah. I mean, especially as an outsider who doesn't even understand your business yet, because it takes time to understand how a business operates. And so in every business, there are certain templates, again, you can kind of themes that companies follow, but they are all unique in a way. And so, like, especially in a new-ish world like cannabis, where you're just not learning as you go, but it's like the regulations change. And like, there was a discussion with the CCC even today about, they sent out that bulletin yesterday about pennying out samples and stuff like that, which I'm still not clear what that even means. I think we're fine, but like, I don't know what that means. And then you've got the meeting today about the 2-driver rule for all the other 3 third-party transporters. So they're like, if the delivery companies get to do 1 driver, why can't we get 1 driver? Like, and those change overnight all of a sudden. And then you're like, okay, now I got to adapt to this new world environment, right? Yep. So as these things change in cannabis, which changes really frequently, like, you're always adapting to the new kind of world that you're living in. And, you kind of play the hand you've been dealt, ultimately.
Yeah, and I think, look, like, with a lot of the folks that we're talking about, like, big VC firms or family offices or investment vehicles, like, as an entrepreneur, you have to remind yourself, these are finance folks.
Yeah.
They don't operate companies. Right? So when they come in and they say, this is off, your margin needs to be higher, there's a critique here and there, that's fine. Right. But, like, you got to take a lot of that stuff with a grain of salt, and you can't let it throw you off your conviction and your strategy, right? Because I've just seen too many founders that will come to me like, hey, we got beat up in this meeting over XYZ. And I'm like, yeah, well, if there's 3 Wall Street folks sitting on, they've never stepped into a manufacturing facility. Right. And so they're not going to understand the point that you're at. And, and so I think, with even the folks in our portfolio and some of the clients that I've advised on that side of what I do, I'm much more, I kind of bend towards listening to what the founder is telling me versus what, anyone in my network might be telling, oh, this business is too difficult. You're going to need this, you're going to need that. And it's like, all right, well, if I invest in a great founder, that founder's going to figure it out, right? Like,
well, that's the point.
It's not really our
like,
job.
It's like, if they can't figure it out, you would hope you have a smart enough founder that will raise their hand and be like, hey, I need help. But if they're not raising their head and things are going and you're making progress and you're actively seeing things happening, like it's working. Whatever that conviction is being kind of played out. Switching up a little bit, because I do want to get to the Little Alert side because I'm a software nerd myself. Like, to make that easy bridge though, are you like an investor in Little Alerts that you came on? Like, how did that all happen? And then I was reading that you're the GM, but now you're the CEO. Was that a transition? Like, take me through like what happened. How did you meet these guys?
It's a great story. I appreciate you asking because I really do like telling the story. I left a company called Lucid Green in November of 23 and was kind of like, I started doing some receptive capital advising stuff, but I was like really looking to own something and like really get stuck into a project. Somebody in my investment group introduced me to Nate and Cody, who are the founders of both Cannabis and Little Alerts, which are the two software products. And we started talking about potentially some strategic options. And what we ended up landing on was, so I had built a whole business plan around what I would do with their businesses, right? And I think when they took a look at it, they were like, well, look, like Cody and Nate and our other co-founder, Austin, they're kind of in your boat. They are highly creative, problem solvers. They don't want to deal with they're very much like, and they're really good at it. They identified, look, what we're missing is we need someone here who can kind of organize this and turn this from a product into a company, right? Where we can grow and we have a pipeline and like do all these things that software companies do.
Right.
And so I joined as the GM, and that was really like, candidly, I think the first year working together was just kind of like, are we all going to work together? Okay, right? There's like, I was kind of the non-co-founder part of the ownership. And just to be clear, the ownership group for Little Alerts, it's the three founders and me. So it's just us. We haven't raised any money. That was obviously attractive to me. And then, recently, I was put into the CEO role, which was largely kind of like the way I viewed it was like 2024 was, do we have something here? Yeah. And is this the team? And I think we answered yes on both of those things. So I think the founding team was kind of ready to say like, all right, Rick's part of the, like Rick's doing this. This is Rick's show to kind of like lead us. So that's how I got involved with them. And look, like three things that we bonded around, right? Information shouldn't be that expensive. Information shouldn't be this difficult to use. And when you have questions about the data, you should have someone to talk to. Mm-hmm. And so those are the three places that we've tried to stand out. And when I heard them talking about that, I mean, just like was like music to my ears and kind of like, we really have bonded around cost-effective, simple, supportive data. Yeah. Right? Because data's messy. We can agree on that.
Yeah, we can definitely agree with data
is messy. And so I think like what I was sick and tired of seeing in the cannabis space was like this kind of very sassy, hey, you buy this thing and then it's yours. You can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I used all those tools and I had questions all the time. Yeah. Like, hey, what does this mean? How do I break down this? And so I was really, really impressed with this group. And, we can talk a little bit about our team later, but it was like a personal connection that I think we all had around these problems.
Well, I like how you actually were like, you got to put the training wheels on, I guess, and be like, is this even going to work? Yeah. Right? Because it's been those three guys, right? And you said Austin is another.
Austin's the CTO. Austin's he's the brains behind what Little Alerts is. So Cody is the product visionary. So he's the one who created basically everything that you've seen in the app. Mm-hmm. Austin's the guy behind the scenes that makes all of that work. Okay. And then Nate, we call him a line item on our balance sheet because he is literally just like, he's a monster, right? Yeah. So he owns Bloom Brothers, successful dispensary in Massachusetts. Yeah. And he's just a monster. I mean, I think he has like 13 companies. He's just one of these guys that like he's a big idea guy like you. Like he's just can navigate all these different things. He creates so many leads for us. And so, if I can just for a second here, like I think one of the most special things about this experience thus far building Little Alerts are the 6 people that are on our team.
You have 6 people now.
Yeah.
So there's the founders, and then is there like
founders or CTO, and then it's all dev. Like
it's all dev.
Yeah, it's me and Cody are the sales and customer support.
Got it. Yeah.
And I'd love to talk, because you and I can nerd out about this. I would love to talk about what we've built from an automation perspective, because we're kind of building a software company differently.
Okay.
2025.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, we can get to that in a second. So just to clarify though, so you've got 6 people, full-time people on it.
Yep.
Is Nate the only one that actually has a plant touching company?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But he's kind of a cheat code for us, right? Because there are things like, for example, when we were building this tool, I don't think we really put too much thought into the retailer's use case, which is ironic because he owns a retail store, right? But once that started, so some of our first beta testers were vertically integrated, and they were the ones who came to Nate and Cody and were like, look, our retail teams are using this. Nate was like, of course they are, like we are too, right? And we were able to, over a period of time, like just Nate's in the building. So like we were able to start kind of working through the different use cases, and Nate and his team were a great place for us to run those ideas by. So we do have a little bit of a superpower in that someone on our team.
Well, I think that's extremely valuable. That's why I brought it up, because I think to myself, like anybody who's done the actual work behind the scenes and the plant touching side, and for those who don't know, plant touching literally means that like you're a license holder yourself, so you actually can touch the plant. Versus an ancillary software service, which is what Littleworks is. Then you have the ability to just have different set of insights, because if you're looking at it from the outside, it's very opaque. Like you don't know really what's going on a day-to-day basis. So anybody who's creating software, I always encourage you at very least have an advisor who actually is plant touching.
I completely agree.
Yeah, because you don't know what's happening on the ground, right?
And our customers like you guys, a lot have been nice enough to welcome us. We show up. We see the manufacturing. We see the retail stores. It's so important. Like I've done some posts on LinkedIn about this. Like if you're a software company, or you're a CEO of a software company, and you're not in these plant touching businesses every few weeks, you're doing yourself a disservice, because you're not getting the information that you need.
Well, I think you could also be very, especially if it, I do talk to a lot of founders who are kind of like one-man shops.
Yeah.
Right. And they're just like, I'm going to be in my basement. I'm going to code for 70 days and I'm going to just have this beautiful product and everybody's going to love it.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work that way. Right. If you aren't close enough to the people who are actually doing the work, your product development path or your product plan is going way off target, because you're developing a bunch of stuff that it's always that, you build something that's looking for a problem. Right. Like nobody has that problem while you're building this whole piece of software to solve something that doesn't exist. Right?
Yeah.
So you have to, I think it's very good that you have Nate on board, because he's going to be that boots on the ground that's going to know on the day-to-day, this is what's actually happening.
And I also have to give Cody his credit too as the co-founder, because Cody and Nate are best friends. And so Cody has been a big part of Nate's, just even from a personal perspective, like Cody's immersed himself in cannabis. Like Cody's in the Massachusetts market, like there's lots of operators in this business that trust Cody over some of the, like we really have spent the time. And I think that you said it best in that there's a lot of companies, and we saw this as an opportunity, right? There's a lot of companies also that go the step further of, I've now created this thing in my basement. Now I'm going to show up and I'm going to tell you that you need to run your business differently using my tool.
Right, exactly.
Right. And I don't like that. I think that takes away from kind of the beauty of software development, which is problem solving.
Yeah.
Right. So what Nate and Cody and Austin did here that I was so excited about was, we don't do any of that. Like half of the comparison tool, the store locator in our app, the customers came to us.
Yeah.
And said, hey, we need this. We need this. Can you build this for us? Right. And so like, when we've got, 10 paying customers that are screaming for something, we drop what we're doing.
Right.
We're like, this is like, it doesn't get easier than this, right? It's just open up your ears and kind of understand just pay attention.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And so I think that's been a superpower for ours. And kudos to the three of them who started this thing, who kind of saw, look, like one of the things that I loved is like, that we talked about is like, I think we understand why like maybe insurance and banking and real estate and a couple other things, like, I think we understand the premiums in cannabis around that with the risk.
Yeah.
Why is software so expensive?
Yeah, exactly. It's all over the place.
It doesn't.
And all of a sudden, and then people, yeah, exactly. And of course, we all know in the software world that it's zeros and ones. And so, like, the real work comes in with customer support.
Dude,
that's like a lot of hours.
93% gross margin business.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what software business is.
Exactly.
Right? Like, there's someone like you that's like mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
And so you're absolutely right. Like and we've even said this, like, we believe this is where software companies go to die, is like where they get themselves in the conference room and they think they're smarter than their customers.
Yep. They think they're smarter, and all of a sudden they've got a board to answer to. Going back to the VC side of it, there's so many software companies that are VC backed.
Yeah.
And now they're just, the VCs, the board is asking them like, okay, we got to do all these things. And all of a sudden the operators get a bill that's 2 or 3 times as much. They're like, oh, we had to raise prices because X, Y, Z. Maybe you're not making enough margin or whatever it might be. That has definitely happened to us once in the past year or so. Actually, it was over a year ago now where we switched off because we were like, you can't just double our rate all of a sudden, like out of nowhere.
It's crazy.
Our monthly, SaaS.
And it's interesting. Like I feel that burn even in like negotiations today with Little Alerts. Like I have people who are saying to me like, what are you going to double this price next year? Like, they feel
Does that fear be like, am I signing up and building all these systems in place to be able to use your service?
Yeah.
And then you're going to all of a sudden, rug pull it and be like, actually, it's like $5,000 a month. And we're like, we just spent a year building all this stuff,
Well, and what we did also, I think, like when we thought about the pricing, is we looked at other markets. So if you look at, there's a couple of markets, and we wanted them to be similar, right? So we all feel that cannabis is obviously a massive opportunity, generational opportunity. But it's also like, if you go, it's a local business opportunity, right? Like this is an opportunity for maybe not everything to be mass produced and shipped from China and like, like the whole nine. But for us, like it's really, really important that when we are talking about the way that we're building this business, externally, we want people to realize that what we're doing with Little Alerts is being done in other industries. And what we're trying to do is bring that type of information sharing into cannabis. So, when people ask us to explain what we do, like part of what we do isn't that interesting.
Right.
It's sourcing public information. There's lots of people that do it. Yeah. Zillow.com does it.
We used to do that. That was one of my last companies. So I've built like 1,000 scrapers at this point, and I've built scrapers that are collecting public data, and their precedent existed beforehand because we were getting worried.
Yeah.
Do you know the actual case that protects scraping?
No.
There's a specific litigation that happened back in, I think it was the 80s. So the brief story of it is that there was a yellow pages back then were huge, right? White pages and yellow.
Sure.
White pages being residential. Now we're dating ourselves.
You are.
And then yellow pages being commercial kind of listings, right? And it was
a big deal in that. It got dropped off.
Exactly. So you get your front door and you're like, oh, I got the new white pages and it has my friend Tommy is now in it. So I whatever. And so you'd be looking up all the numbers and stuff like that. And then but there's competition in that market as well, because it's like, it's ad space. You're not selling your listings, you're selling ad space, right? And so you open the book and it's like, oh, there's the karate store and there's the salon and all these other things next to all the residential listings.
Yeah.
So what happened was, the reason why I know this so intimately is because we were worried back in the day when we were doing a ton of web scraping for like banking information, like publicly available APY, APR rates and stuff like that for banking products. I had to find out if this was if we're going to be in trouble for all this stuff.
Sure.
So what happened was there a lot of competition. One of the competitors in that particular market, it was like something like Minnesota or some random place. And there was a company that was basically copying the listings from the other one. So instead of sourcing their own data, they'd just be copying someone else's data and putting it into their white pages and running different ads on it, right? So they'd own all the ad space on the board.
Yeah.
Went to court because they found out. How they found out was they started putting fake numbers in. And so the other company would copy the fake numbers in, and they'd be like, if you see that number in there, that means that they copied it from us. So went to court, and the court basically said that public information is not copyrightable, right?
Yeah.
However, like design is, right? So if a specific aesthetic, then that is something that you can protect.
Sure.
But if you're just copying a factual information, such as a phone number, that is not something you can protect. And so therefore, they can copy all they want. So since that was okay, I was like, well, that gives us, because we were looking at like banking products like checkings and savings accounts and credit cards and scraping all the data off of there to populate our website with all the latest information in the data. And, to the point where we were even reselling it to other companies because we had so much data, kind of, I guess, what you're doing here in a sense.
Yep.
Had so much of this data that we were able to license it out to other people because we went through all the work and build all the scrapers to be able to actually aggregate all this information together. So
I think that's the piece that also gives a little bit of protection is you have to be adding value. You're just taking information and just turning around and selling it out the back door.
Yes.
That's probably in a gray area that you don't want to be in.
Yeah.
But with Lit Alerts, it's really 3 pieces of technology. The first, again, nothing special. It's crawlers, web crawlers, right? We just point them at 2,000 dispensaries in 14 markets currently. The second piece is where we add value. So this is the proprietary algorithms that Austin and the team have built that analyze that data. And what we're outputting is actually a derivative data set. It's a brand new data set of events that we are predicting based off of that, right? So now that gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of what we can produce and how we can present that data. The third piece of our tech is just how we make it available, right? We've got a web app, got a notification feature, and an API.
Right.
And so, when we break it down like that for most people, people understand that what we're doing is just taking information and just kind of packaging it up and shipping it. We're doing a lot to enhance it and to create value around it, right? And look, I think that particularly as AI and automation and all these things become more prevalent, I think like data sharing is people are going to be a little bit more comfortable with it. Like this whole like data is oil thing has made people very protective and very crazy about their data. Look, I think that there are some industries where data is everything and it's your edge, right? And I think that there are some industries like cannabis where data, it's not everything, but it does give you that massive edge.
It does give you a massive edge. Right. Yeah. And that's why services like Lit Alert specifically in this case is extremely valuable for an operator because, you can see, and we should probably go into what a Lit Alerts is at some point because we kind of danced around a little bit. But actually, can you give me like the high level? Like, why would somebody subscribe to Lit Alerts?
Yeah, so you subscribe to Lit Alerts if on an ongoing basis you have questions about the market that you currently can't answer. So these things include, where are my products? Are they getting low? How are my competitors performing? Where are they? Where are they getting low?
I wish we could hide our information on your... I actually asked Cody the other day, I was like, hey, he was like, hey, you got this one anomaly with your data. That's how proactive you guys are, which I love, is Cody will reach out to me specifically. And he'll be like, hey, what do you think? Because he's a product guy.
He is.
And I was like, oh, don't worry about it. But if you could hide our data, that'd be fantastic. Because I don't want any of my competitors to know.
We've had a couple of people ask us.
Yeah. And I was like, what was the price? And he's like, it'd be a lot.
I'm going to buy the company.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that, where we've been able to identify the needs, I think have been far more various than we even thought going into this, to be fair. So we thought we were building a tool for brands and wholesalers. Like I thought I would answer the question that way. Like if you're a brand or a wholesaler, like we have brands, wholesalers, distributors, manufacturers, retailers, right? We've got all of these ancillary companies. And so, look, I think that I don't have one answer for who uses it because it's been surprising. We have a lot of different use cases. I can tell you that the vast majority of folks on our system right now are kind of in 3 buckets. They're either sales team, marketing team, or the, kind of like buying and inventory operations team at a retail. And so just to walk you through those different use cases, brands and wholesalers, they're using this information very similar to how you guys are doing it, seeing where their inventory is, doing competitive analysis, conquesting, finding out information, maybe finding out some information about the retailer before you go talk to the buyer, right? And so they're doing all of that kind of information. But the difference with Lit Alerts is that they're doing it fast, right? Like we emphasize speed. I think some of our competitors have kind of gone about this, and no hate on it, but they've kind of gone about it assuming that there's like data analysts at all of these cannabis companies. Yeah. And that's not true.
That is definitely not true.
Most cannabis companies don't have that. Right. And if they do have someone who has it, like yourself, who has like a data background, it's a fraction of their time that they're putting towards this, right?
Tiny fraction of my time.
So it's not going to be like Jason sitting in front of Lit Alerts for 3 hours a day, right? So like we decided like, look, we got to build some very, very simple reports that allow people to get in and out in 15 minutes. Because they got stuff to do, right? And so that's like these quick hits. We've got the notification feature. So like sellers that are out in market, they're getting alerts and things that are happening. So that's really a big use case. The marketing use case, largely around competitive analysis.
Yeah.
But then also around merchandising audits. And one of the ways that we've seen marketing departments using the tool is ensuring that inventory is where it's supposed to be for if they're doing an in-store activation.
Yep.
seeing how that in-store activation is performing, looking into how
we use it.
in-store activations are doing, right? And then on the operations side, it's mainly in the retail, buying and inventory teams. It's all about snooping on competitors.
Well, because I want to know, like, all right, this, our neighbor's selling eighths for like $15. Like, what are we gonna do? And like all this.
You know what else is great is a use case that we're seeing a lot is there's 5 stores in an area, right? 4 of them are carrying Good Vibes, right? If one of those stores notices that 2 of those stores went out of stock, they're gonna send an email to their customers and say, hey, by the way, we got Good Vibes. We're stocked.
Oh, wow.
Right? So that's become a really big use case for retailers, and particularly the marketing teams, is they're looking for these opportunities where, like, hey,
reach out to customers.
Are we the only ones who have this popular product in stock? Like, let's hit our customers, get them in.
Yeah. So that's that's actually super interesting, because we do find that some of our customers are really loud about it too.
Yeah.
They will go into a store and they'll be like, do you guys have Good Vibes? And if they don't, they're like, all right, they just walk out. So if you're proactive enough that you're going to send an email in advance, like that's a really good way to capture customers.
And I think, look, like I think that, marketers, I mean, less so with AI today, but like they're constantly trying to create the edge and the content that supports it, right? And so if they can find that edge really quickly using a tool like ours, they can focus on the content creation and really trying to bring people into the store.
Yeah, exactly. You get really creative around that stuff. So yeah, and our team uses it all different types of ways. The marketing side, definitely. It's just good to know, like, hey, are they out of stock before we show up here? Totally. If we're going to spend an hour driving to a pop-up for one of our brand ambassadors on the field marketing team, like they don't want to show up and be like, all right, there's 2 units left.
Yep.
So it's like,
brutal,
because it's also just hard to get a hold of the retailers. You try to call their front number, their front end, and like they're busy. So I can't be like, hey, how many Good Vibes do you have left? You know what I mean? So it's like really, so we look up.
And you all work hard to get those in-store play. Like it's not like retailers have an infinite list of, available slots. So like, when you get those, you got to make them count.
Exactly.
Doing a little bit of that legwork before and having a tool like Little Alerts that you can do that legwork, which makes it a lot easier, right?
Yeah. And also, but you're right though, that first use case is really accurate, where we use it as opportunities to reach out to buyers again, because we're like, hey, we're running out of stock, or we have a pop-up 2 weeks from now, like you got to restock back before then. And the competitive analysis is helpful too. We definitely run a lot of analytics based off of that.
Yeah, but like, look, like a few weeks ago, you guys had a question about some stuff in other markets, right? It's like, we just want to be a data partner that's not like towing the line on everything, right? Like, okay, we got a database, right? I told you about the technology, right? That second piece, which is our bread and butter, it's just a massive database of information. Yeah. So like, if one of our early customers comes to us and says like, hey, we're curious about some other states, sure, we'll run a quick SQL query. And
exactly. That was super helpful, because we looked at it, we're like, oh wow, there's an opportunity here, maybe not so much there, and like we kind of like pieced it together, and it was nothing to act on in that moment, but it was just helpful to kind of almost realign us to be like, okay, this is the right kind of direction to go in.
Yeah.
Actually, speaking of direction, I love that phrase on your website. It says, this is a compass, not GPS, or something like that.
That's Cody and Nate's.
Yeah, because, and I think a lot of people who, when they first get into it, they might mistake it as point of sale data.
Yeah.
But it's scraped, right? And so all the additional data layers you're putting on top of it, you're trying to obviously put guidance in place, directionally accurate, but not necessarily precise.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's kind of like, the way I think about it is like there's kind of 2 ways to generate this data, right? You can go do deals with the POS providers. Most of the time, that's a commercial relationship, so the product ultimately gets more expensive. But on top of that, what we noticed was, if you go and talk to like the biggest cannabis brands in the country, on the top end, they're getting like 30 or 40% of their accounts to opt in.
Yeah.
Right. And so just to explain how this works is like, if you're going to use POS data, hey, newsflash, that belongs to the retailer.
Yeah.
That's not that.
Yeah. They have to opt in. They have to.
Yeah. No matter what anyone says, that data is not owned by the POS company. Yeah. It's owned by the retailer.
And they can pull it. They can be like, we're done with this shit.
Right.
Yeah.
And so look, like, one of the things that I think, the way we've approached it, and look, we have other competitors that do what we do as well. I'm not asking the retailer for anything.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we have retailers who show up and they're like, oh, you're stealing data and blah, blah, blah. And we're like,
do you get actually people like, oh, wow.
Yeah. We get people like, it rarely goes past the first conversation, because I think once they talk to us and see what we're trying to do, give them some of the use cases,
right,
they're like, oh, I think this makes a lot of sense. Right. And especially for the price point. And so, Like, yeah, we on the retail side, we get people who, how do you know what's going on in my, like, what are you hacking into? And we're like, we're looking at your website.
Yeah, exactly.
And so look, like, Cody and Austin are geniuses for figuring out how to use the information that's available to get to 70, 90% accuracy. Right?
Exactly. And to get that extra layer above than just the scraping. As like you said, it's like you can take the data, but you have to actually do additional work to it
and
to make it work.
And us, man, we're not resting on that. Like, we've got an enhancement coming in March. Like, we've been working on how we can alter our predictive algorithm, because look, when we have as active of a user base as we have, they're telling us the anomalies.
Right.
They're helping us. We've got that feedback loop now.
Those false positives sometimes throw
you guys have done it, right?
Yeah.
You guys have come to us and say, hey, look, this looked great. Let's log it. We're going to try and figure out what
there's always like, but we know some of the bad actors, and not even bad actors. It's just the way they manage their inventory or something like that, where all of a sudden it'd be like 20 units disappeared. And we're like, wow, we sold 20 units. And we look at it like, no, 20 units at 9:30 at night.
Yeah.
They like took it off the shelf. And then the next morning, 20 units just arrived and it's just back on the shelf. And I'm like, there's just those weird anomalies
are tough for us to nail down. But I think that we're just honest about it, man.
Yeah.
Like, like, we're just like, don't like misrepresent. We don't say like, oh yeah, it's 100%, but I think that, we get some people who get tough with us sometimes. And the line that we usually throw out is, do you want 80% accuracy or do you want 0% visibility?
Right.
What do you want? Right. And so I think that, and look, to be clear, I think there's space, if you have it in the budget, for both a tool like that like a headset or BDSA that plugs into directly into POS, and a tool like ours, right? Because you're layering data sources that are complementary, right? Like that, you get a source of truth. On our side, you get this entire swath of information that you're never going to get through POS integrations, right? Because POS integrations happen at the retail level.
Yeah.
And there's nothing competitive, right? Like,
right.
And so, and just to be clear, like, we're all estimating, right? Like,
yeah, of course.
BDSA,
they still have to
headset, they still have
they project based on the 30% of the stores.
They're honest about that as well. So like, every once in a while we get someone who's like really tough with us, and they're like, if it's not 100% accurate, and we're just like, well, then you shouldn't use a data tool.
Exactly.
Because like, that's not,
that doesn't exist, right?
Like, look, ideally, every retailer would throw their transaction data into a pool that people like us could develop on. It's never going to happen.
Yes.
Right.
And I feel like, there is definitely that kind of protectionism, like, oh, it's my data, I don't want to share it. And it's just like, what we were asking before Little Alerts even popped up, what we were asking from retailers is just tell us our numbers. We don't even care about the competitors. Yeah. We don't care how much you sell, how many eighths you're selling. Yeah. We only care, like, how's our product doing? And it was so hard to extract the information out of them, because they'd have to run a report, they'd send it to us. And some people were better than others, because maybe if it's a slower store, they're like, yeah, I got time today. Like, I'll just, run a report, like that. But it was like so hit or miss if we'd even get the report. And also it would happen so infrequently that we're just like, this is not sustainable. Like, we don't know how we're doing in these stores.
Yeah. And to your point, right? Like, you guys have put effort into putting Little Alerts into your operating process, right? Now imagine if you've got this tool that's in the operating process and retailers are popping in and out all the time. It's like, it becomes difficult, right? Whereas, like, look, we're covering 94% of the stores in Massachusetts, right? We got this massive data set where, like, even screw the sales data, even if you're just looking for pricing, what they're carrying, all these things, there's all this great information that's out there. You can do it one of two ways. You can pay an army of people to thumb through menus all day, or you can, work with some nerds like us. Yeah. And we can find out for you.
So what is the future? Like, where does the roadmap kind of go from here? You got some launches coming out, you said, in March.
Yeah.
Is there any going to be like big announcements, or are you announcing any of this at like a big event that's coming up or something like that? Or is it really just through email you're going to like start rolling out some of these features?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, so there will be, hopefully, as we work through,
like CanadaDataCon or something like that in Miami.
We won't be there. We have one of our advisors who will be there representing us. We've got another thing that we've got going on during that time. We may be announcing something at NECAN, but this year's all about partnerships for us. So like last year, 2024 was answering two questions: do we have something, and do we have the right team? Like, yes, to both, right? So now this year, and we were going to talk a little bit about like how we think we're building a little differently. Our entire back office is automated.
Yeah, you talk about automation.
Like, and you'll hear me like nerd out about this, but you can see me nerd out about this on LinkedIn. Everyone's looking at AI right now, and they should. Super interesting, super cool. Automation is the piece of this that gives value to your business instantly. So I'll give you an example now. Software companies.
Yeah.
It's a little easier for us.
Yeah.
But we use a lot of off-the-shelf software and connect all of it through Zapier or something like that, right? So I'll give you an example. When we're lucky enough and someone signs a deal with us, everything that happens after someone signs an agreement happens. Right. Set up in QuickBooks.
There's no admin in the background typing up the email.
It just happens.
Just all works.
And so once we started playing with that, we, like, in my head, I started thinking like, oh, that's 2 hires. We don't have to hire now.
Exactly.
There's this flow and, look, like, I think a lot of people want to build proprietary technology. And I think that unless you're a technology company, you shouldn't be building technology. That's my opinion.
As a former agency person, former owner of an agency as well, we will charge you a lot of money to build something proprietary for yourself.
Exactly.
Or you can just buy something off the shelf.
Yeah.
Like, and we've been there many times. And fortunately, I'm a technologist and I can build my own software. But like, that is a funny, one of the things that actually we talk about a lot here, and I've been taking a lot of interviews. We're in the hiring process right now with a few people. Yeah. And I tell them all, which I don't know if it's off-putting or not, but whatever. I'm the owner, so I'm like, whatever. Shoot from the hip. Be like, all right, let's go. But one of the things I've been telling people is, I don't necessarily want to hire like 100 people overnight. I don't payroll is your number one expense in cannabis. And you see all these brands come in, they're like, we're hiring for 50 roles, and they fill like 30 of them, and then they go out of business because they can't afford all these people because of these grand plans, but they don't think about cash flow. They just think it's going to be this green rush where they're going to be printing money. So let's hire all the bodies right away. Yeah. And I've had friends of mine who have started companies, dispensaries, and have hired like 35 people out front. And we're like, what are you doing? You're in the middle of nowhere, Massachusetts. Yeah. And you're on a major highway. All right, great. But like, maybe start with like a couple people. And if you're overwhelmed and it's like you can't serve all the people, hire your next person. Like, I don't know if you should be hiring 30 people up front. That doesn't make any sense.
I was in a room recently and there was a line thrown out that I thought was so great, which was like, the only foot traffic study that matters is opening your doors, right? And it's true. It's like, all these deals are done off of, there's foot traffic and how many
foot traffic studies
and all this stuff. Yeah. And it's like the only foot traffic study that matters is getting your doors open and then seeing. And that's an argument for starting with a staff of 10.
Right.
And then seeing, are we blowing up? Great. Let's start adding. Right.
But to speak to your point about automation, it's like, I want to automate things. I don't necessarily want to have 10 bodies just sitting typing away all day, like producing emails or onboarding documents or ST4s and W9s or whatever, IRS forms that we have to submit to all these different
So I'll give you another example, and it's one that, so we have been a little nervous to introduce AI into our system, mainly because, bad data in, bad data out. We want to make sure that, we're still a year old commercializing this product. So there are some milestones that we want to meet just in terms of accuracy and predictability that we want to get to before we start doing anything fancy with AI in our system. But automation is like at the core of everything we're doing. And the reason for that, and largely necessity, but I'll give you an example, right? Like, something that's important to us is responding to customers like lightning fast. We talk about it all the time. Cody is all over it and all over us about it. And he should be, because it's a way that we've stood out.
That is something that I will harp on to the day I die. Customer service is everything for a company.
It's everything.
So for me, I tell my team, because we have, unfortunately, since we run kind of a hemp company and a cannabis company, we have people coming in from different angles. And so my cannabis sales team gets hemp questions sometimes. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, like, just forward it to me. Yeah. But I require like a 1 hour response. Like, on the weekends, I get it, make it 24 hours, but you got to respond to people within an hour.
Yep.
So that's something that I as a core belief with me is customer service.
But we're busy. We're a 6-person team. So how do you make that happen, right? Well, this is what you do.
Yeah.
You make it so that when someone starts a request, like, so we've formalized the process. In our app, you can fill out a form that is a WP form that triggers an automation that sends a Slack message to let our customer support channel know that there is a new issue. And then a ticket is automatically opened in Intercom.
Perfect.
And so it's like all these things happen just out of the gate. And then we're going a step further now. because the first place we're going to mess with AI is going to be customer support.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, we're looking at it right now. What systems are you looking at right now?
Intercom.
Intercom? Okay, I didn't know Intercom was going to introduce AI.
Yeah, man, they've got this great Fin AI agent that we've begun to train a little bit, like the kind of the personality of it, and we're trying to. I mean, we have to build up the knowledge base.
Yeah,
we have some work to do just in terms of the actual content that this can call information from. But like we're doing some analysis around like, you know, like a lot of this stuff is password resets and like, you know, and so it's like right now we're thumbing all those out.
Yeah.
But like that's the first place that we're going to introduce AI is just like, how can we be, because then like response times could go down to almost nothing, right? Depending on what the issue is.
Yeah. And I remember when you first launched, I was like, all right, can you add this person? Can you add? You didn't have a place to add people to the site. That was crazy. What you guys doing over there?
Yeah. And look, like a lot of it is just like moving really fast and focusing on the stuff that mattered. But yeah, I'm super excited to try and mess around with AI. I think customer support is like the perfect place for it. We already have just so much automation built into the like we love the intercom system. Like we've been very happy with.
Intercom is pricey though.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean pretty pricey. So we use Gorgeous.
How is it?
It's good. It has AI capabilities. Yeah. I think it's like not much to add on, and it kind of answers a lot of the questions like, hey, reset password, or what's my order? Like for this is for e-commerce D2C stuff. Sure. So on the hemp side, we have Gorgeous plugged in, but we don't really, since I think our biggest problem right now is that we don't have enough of the bodies to be able to build the automation capabilities, because you're a tech company with 6 devs or whatever, or 4 devs, so you guys can just figure out.
Like I'm pretty, like I'm the CEO, but like I have technical chops. Right. Like let's not, like I don't want to make it.
All right, sorry, I didn't mean to insult you. 5 out of 6.
Not at all. Not at all. I just want
Nate's the only guy.
I just want to be clear that like, and I think most people, and you'll have an appreciation for this, right? Like, if you're a business side person in tech and you can't do some stuff yourself and you can't have an appreciation for the simple tasks and the harder tasks that require engineers or AI agents or whatever, you're doing yourself a disservice. So I've spent time, I've taken the courses, I've done, you know, I know a lot of different web languages. I build our marketing website.
Nice.
We do all this stuff ourselves. And I think that really is a big piece of the early success story of Lit Alerts is like, we have 6 people that can do so many different things.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Right. And so yeah, like I'm just really excited to start digging into some of this stuff, because I think we're getting to the point now where like most of our business processes are automated, and like business partners are probably going to kill me that I'm even bringing this up because I talk about it all the time. But it's like, you know, when I look at this stuff, it's like, this is the automations that I have here allow Cody and I to spend more time with customers. It allows Austin to spend more time in ones and zeros.
Right.
Right. And like, so when you say intercom is expensive, I get it. Yeah. Right. Compared to other things. But if I have to hire a $60,000 a year customer service rep, is intercom that expensive?
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And so I think that we don't have everything figured out yet, but I think we have built an internal operating model that we as a group may even be able to take on to our next project, because it works. And it was messy. Yeah. And at times it is still messy. Right. Yeah. But like, I mean, look, like Cody, Nate, and Austin, we're talking all day. Yeah. Right. All day. Yeah. They're asking me questions, you know, for a while there, they were asking me questions about every little customer, you know. I just started automating a bunch of it. Yeah. Right. So like if I switch a status in the CRM, they get a Slack message that says this customer has now moved to the state. You know, so it's like not like, hey Rick, what happened with that mean? It's like they're getting a lot of this information now. Yes. And now like, look, we're moving to a point where we're leaning into partnerships very heavily. We did this great partnership with Apex Trading where we're huge.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, exactly. So like, could you speak about like any of the future partnerships that are coming up?
Definitely. Yeah. So going back to our technology, right? If you just focus in on that second part, a structured database of event data. We're going out to basically all of the top cannabis folks in the tech stack and saying which of these events are interesting for your users in your interface. Okay. So example, right? Low quantity and out of stock alerts. Yes. We send an email every morning. Right. So if we're comfortable sending that information to you in the email, like why aren't we comfortable sending it directly into your Apex? Yeah, exactly. Right? Exactly. So that's where we're trying to innovate on partnerships is like, okay, we have this structured event data. What's missing from your tech interface that this data can help your customers do more with your tool.
Yeah.
In a true partnership of like, how do we drive usage? Because like, again, we're not that married to like everything has to happen in the Little Alerts tool. At the end of the day, we're data, and that should travel wherever you need it to make sure that you have the information you need.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about that. And I do feel like there's a lot of work to get something up for automation specifically, to get it to work the right way, because it's always messy.
That's well said.
It takes work.
Lots of iteration.
And the partnership stuff I think is also fantastic, but the big missing link there right now is that it's a problem I've been working on for over a year now.
Yeah.
And I haven't solved it yet because it's kind of like starts and stops, when I'm trying to work on these problems. But whoever can solve like the master database of hookups, of being like, all right, Apex is, ID 72, Little Alerts is 732, and then and all the other systems have and even the CCC has its own license number attached to everything. And then there's the idea of like, okay, there's to take an example, like Panacea, right? There's a Panacea, they have 3 stores. Okay, are we selling it to Panacea, or are we selling it to individual stores? And like, so there's that kind of like hierarchy also with like individual kind of relationships. So from a tech perspective, I know how hard that is to solve.
Yeah.
And also, even in the Little Alert side, even internally, so those partnerships are going to be fantastic if you can figure out how to make that master database of all these relationships, kind of like how they can map across all these different systems. Because, my team was asking me, hey, because I built an app that uses a lot of the Little Alerts data.
Cool.
And the Little Alerts and the data in the app that I created, they were like, okay, can we, how do we know if they're running a Spark campaign? And I'm like, different database, different system, right? And so the structured data is super important to me, because I'm just like, can somebody just do all the translation for me? I don't want to have to manually map all these things or hire somebody in the Philippines to like...
Well, it's not efficient, right? For you and every other operator to have to figure this out. The tech platform should figure this out.
Yeah.
I think that for us, for us, we've been very loud about it. And I'll shout out our friends at Apex. They feel the same way, which is like, they've done a ton of integrations. They were nice enough. They were our first integration, so they were very helpful to us. We actually like spun up our API for that purpose, and like they were great with us. But like they feel the same way. We do wholesale really, like Apex. We do wholesale really well.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we're the best at it.
Yeah.
Little Alerts does data really well. They're the best at these two systems to talk to each other. We just leave that up to our customers to make that connection.
Exactly.
We should make it for them.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're excited we've got a lot of partnership conversations happening. I think that we don't have to sell this ourselves either. Like, we don't really feel like we have to control the customer relationship, though we love it. There's lots of folks that have major look, we know where we are in the pecking order too, right? If you're a retailer, you can't open your doors without a POS. You can open your doors without Little Alerts. We don't want you to, but you can, right? And so I think we're just realists, and we're deferential to others in the stack who have, like if you're running an integration with Metric, like we don't have to do any of that stuff, right? And so like we like where we are. We're simple, lightweight tools, and we like to and we like to kind of like play for specific use cases and bolster other tech companies too that are in the chain.
It's fantastic. So I guess if there was something that you want to leave us with that is maybe something that is very helpful for our audience to know, because our audience is going to be a lot of industry insiders.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of people who are in the industry who are looking to potentially subscribe to Little Alerts, or already existing customers of yours who are just like trying to maybe figure out ways to do things a little bit better in the system. I guess, are there any kind of like quick little one hitter of guidance or information for these people?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think we said it before, right? Data's messy. So if you're working with a data provider, this data provider should make themselves available to you, right? And they should be able to answer your questions. You should be looking for partners in the tech stack that, as we were talking before, you get a sense if someone understands the challenges of cannabis. And I'd say for like, one of my big lines right now is like, make up with your software providers. I know we're all mad. You're all mad at us, but like, you need software providers to run businesses. And I think that if some operators would spend a little bit more time with their tech providers and challenge them more, ask more of us, right? Ask more of us, give us more information. Don't expect that we know exactly what you need. Get aggressive. Like, let us know what needs to be in these tools. Like, our customer base is amazing with that. right? And they don't cut any corners with us, and they say, you know, you guys release this makes this part difficult. And like for us, it's like, it's just solid gold. So I'd say like, don't rest on like, hey, I need something that solves all my problems. Start working with something, start iterating on it, and then challenge that provider to get you what you need and tell them exactly why you need it. Because chances are there's lots of other people that need it too, and they're going to build it.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's like, you know, I'd love to see this industry kind of get less of the like plant touching versus non-plant touching, you know, like the friction, like open your mind a little bit more. I think there's a lot of people in the ancillary space that have their heart in a good spot and are really pulling for this industry and the plant touching operators.
Love it. That was really nicely wrapping it up. All right, fantastic. Thank you very much, Rick, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And
great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you got to even the tour of the facility.
It's awesome.
It's been fun. I've known you for a bit now, so I figured it'd be good to get you.
I appreciated it very much.
All right, thank you.
Cool. Thanks, man.